Hey there, cats and kitties. I am the Blues Man, Johnny Blues. With this video, we'll discuss my thoughts on episode 3 of the anime series Megalo Box. And somewhat surprisingly, our triumphant hero's Ward makes his debut in this episode in the form of this kid, Sachio. And it's not even him, by himself. It's like this whole little group of street-dwelling ne'er-do-wells. They've taken to thievery to survive because they are destitute, they're starving, and from right off the bat, we're introduced to the fact that Sachio is pretty tech-savvy, which is pretty cool. He's like operating this tablet or handheld thing, and he's got like this radio-controlled or remote-controlled mouse, and they accost this guy who's got like a glass case in the back of his truck full of presumably expensive cameras and such. And so the idea is they run up, somebody sneaks the mouse into the glass case. Don't exactly know how they were able to do that. But they call it to the guy's attention. He freaks out. He opens it up and tries to get rid of the mouse. And then they all subsequently run up while he's distracted, grab some of the camera stuff, and make off with it, with the intention of sort of pawning it off later, and it's kind of tragic because they're getting doubly gypped. They're not even getting money for it. They're just hoping to get pieces of candy, and then the guy gyps them again on not giving them 4 pieces of candy when there's 4 kids, one for each of them. So, of course, Sachio ends up with no candy. He's pissed off, and this coincides, of course, with Joe and his manager, Pops, looking to upgrade his gear, for the Megalo boxing and everything. Pops, for all intents and purposes, has this working idea as to how they're going to approach this. We see flashbacks of the discussion with the crime boss guy who's sort of put them up to this or backed them into the corner. So this is their only recourse, at this point, owing money and such like that. And Pops goes into sort of the main HQ of the Megalonia place or whatever it is, the Megalo boxing, sort of HQ, to register Joe's identity. And you can see he's like skulking around. He's really nervous. Everything. He runs into somebody who recognizes him, and he's sort of, schmoozing him. Oh, I got a guy. I want to see what it's like on the opposite side of the tracks for a change. But he's like nervously going over the computer thing to register Joe, and it successfully goes through. So at least he's got that going for him. Although Joe ends up at the bottom, the bottommost tier out of like 257, whatever it is, stats and on that roster. So I mean, he's got his work cut out for him, effectively, gear or no gear, perfectly working or otherwise. It's like, holy hell. And they got 3 months that they got to do this, they got to accomplish this. But I like how Pops has this working plan to put in motion, where effectively he's like, I've boiled it down to 5 specific guys that, Joe, you're going to have to go up against. You're going to have to win all the fights against them, preferably in the first round, and not, linger on too long, because your gear is going to be taxed. And as I say, they were at this guy's, shop looking to have the stuff upgraded and fitted and fixed up, whatever like that. And he scopes out this other gear, like behind a curtain, such like that. They got this big sort of thuggy guy that's there as well with his own gear. It looks like he's going to take down a couple of mountains, something like that. But it's just, I love how it all coincides and how it all wraps together, where, I was thinking in the early going of the episode, okay, why are we suddenly following these kids? What point are they going to serve, if any at all, Like, it kind of reminded me, in having heard of this being a commemorative series for the anniversary of Ashita no Joe, this former, 70s era anime, I did sample out some of the first episode of Ashita no Joe, and in, at least the first half of it, however long into it I got, before turning it off and figuring I'll save that for later, there were some street kids running around getting into trouble in that first episode. And so I began to wonder, as I'm watching this one, was maybe there something to that? Was there a similar dynamic where the titular Joe of that former series maybe had some sort of ward or some kids or kid that was following him, looked up to him, that kind of thing? Sort of like passing the baton, but not yet. Building for the future. Like if they ever did a sequel series, maybe it was the kid who followed him around grown up kind of thing. I was thinking of all of this as I'm watching, this particular episode. And so I really liked the debut of Sachio. He was kind of annoying, really mouthy. But being that he comes from the streets, being that he was starving, he's had to fend for himself. His whole little troop has had to fend for all of themselves. And we see what they've had to resort to just to survive. It's understandable that, here when he's giving advice to Pops, who thinks he has everything aligned and outlined in his mind, and they upgrade the gear for Joe and everything like that. He's telling him, he's setting him straight. He's like, well, look, you're going to be able to move faster, but the weight of this stuff is going to slow it down, and you're going to waste the battery power. It's going to die out before, the end of the first round, and then Joe's effectively a sitting duck. And I'm like, damn, this kid knows his crap, and even Pops has to acknowledge that fact. And this kid, he's grabbing on to anything he can. He's grappling for a hold of anything that'll get him out of Dodge, that'll get him out of this destitute life. So effectively, he turns to Joe and he's like, look, you want to go to Megalonia? Please, will you take me with you? And of course, Joe's like, I'm not having that. Get out of here, you runt. Get out of here, kid. You bother me. And so, of course, you have Sachio not taking no for an answer, not taking things lying down. We have this grand debut that it was the kids who found that gear that was hidden behind the curtain back at the pawnbroker guy's place. And he goes and sneaks in, and he's effectively wanting to take back what is rightfully his, what he got gypped on when the kids all brought it to this guy. He probably got a little sack full of candy, which was gone within the hour, whenever he brought it in. And so it's rightfully theirs. They found it, and he wants to gift it sort of to Joe. And of course he gets caught. I'm not exactly clear on how he managed to get the gear out and leave it with his friends, long enough for them to go get Joe and be like, our boy's in trouble. Can you go help him? And you couldn't even tell when Joe finally shows up at the place to, help Sachio out, that he was wearing the gear because, of course, it's less bulky. It was more form-fitting, akin to how Yuri's is. And I thought it was really interesting that Yuri's plagued at this point by what Joe had said to him when they had their matchup. You call this real Megalo boxing? We'll see. One of these days, we're going to have a rematch. I'm going to hand you your ass on a plate. And, but this is plaguing Yuri and everything like that. But, this new gear is kind of similar. It's still being worn on the outside of Joe's arms, but under his jacket, you couldn't even tell. And he ends up ripping it off when the big burly guy who looks like he can take down mountains with his big sumo gear, whatever like that, he starts throwing down, and they're beating the hell out of poor little Sachio and trying to find out where he made off with the gear, where he brought it to or whatever like that. And so, of course, Joe is there to save the day, but the new gear, the gear that Sachio stole, which he had found in the first place, stole back, effectively breaks down in the midst of this fight with this big hulking guy. And so then Joe does something that flabbergasted the ever-loving hell out of me. He faces this guy with no gear. Sachio helps him take it off because it's all like electrifying and everything like that. And so Joe's like, just give me some pointers. Tell me what I got to do. And you think, Pops thinks he's talking to him because at this point Pops has shown up with the truck with the other kids in tow, hoping to be the cavalry over the hill, that kind of thing. But really, Joe is talking to Sachio. He's like, tell me, you're seeing what's going on. You're observing what's going on. And I love that close-in shot on Sachio's face where he closes his eyes and he's listening. And he can hear the pistons in this big hulking guy's gear. And he's like, okay, there's a lag on the right side. So he's going to come at you with a left. So as long as you dodge that. And I love how Pops, earlier in the episode, Pops is telling him, forget the dodging, forget the parrying. You got to be focused on where the hands are, as they're moving and everything like that, and blocking and such like that. And now it comes down to parrying. This is the winning move. It is necessitated that Joe parry. And so, of course, not Joe Perry from Aerosmith. But Pops laughs about that. He's like, yeah, it figures, and Joe takes this guy down, giving him an uppercut right to the jaw. And I absolutely loved it. In the aftermath of this, you know, Sachio's heartbroken. He's like, just gonna go back to my life. Glad this situation, this scenario worked out temporarily, though it may have been. See you later, Joe. You know, have a nice life. And Joe does that very heroic, that classic style, turning around. Where you going, kid? Aren't you coming to Megalonia with us? You know? And I was like, yeah, hell yes. Because it's like, it's something I said in my episode 2 discussion video, but it's not just the great aesthetics, the visual aesthetics and animation style, the character design of this series that harkens back to that classic, you know, mid to late 90s sort of anime flair, the Akiras and Ghost in the Shell and Cowboy Bebop and things like that. It's also the characterization, it's also the plotting and the story structure and how these characters interact and how highly sort of Joe thinks of himself, but he's compassionate. You know, he's kind of like Rocky Balboa. He's this guy, he's this you know, tough fighting guy, but he's got a heart of gold. And I love that dynamic. I'm going to save this kid. I'm going to get him out of Dodge and maybe by extension help, you know, all of these poor unfortunate kids. It'll trickle down. I'll help Sachio. He's got this prowess. He's got this gift. He's got this tech savvy. I can utilize him. It'll benefit me, and that'll benefit him. And you know, hopefully it'll work its way down the grapevine to help these other kids as well, and give them something to root for and to shoot for and to hope for. And I mean, it was just dynamite. You know, much like the first 2 episodes, every single episode of this anime, I am stoked from beginning to end. I love the classic style. I mean, I'm looking at this anime and you could tell me, if I like knew nothing about it, you could have told me, oh, this came out in 1996, 1997, 1999. And I'd be like, okay, yeah, I can tell. You know, and I mean that in the highest possible compliment, in the highest regard and esteem. It's just that damn good. So, you know, enough of my yapping on this episode. Love to hear from you guys in the comments below what you thought of episode 3, Megalo Box, as well. If you had as much of a resounding excitement in watching it as I did, love it or hate it, anything goes in the comments below. Just love having that conversation. But I have yet to run into anyone who hasn't been hyped up about this series, or who hasn't been excited about it or enjoying it like I have. And but of course, to each their own and a bag of chips. If you don't happen to like it, oh well. You know, I'm sure you like something else that's airing concurrently. Tell me about that. And so yeah, otherwise it'll be pretty much up for me on this. Hope this video finds you well. I'll catch you all later. Peace.